بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألم تر إلى ربك كيف مد الظل ولو شاء لجعله ساكنا ثم جعلنا الشمس عليه دليلا ثم قبضناه إلينا قبضا يسيرا وهو الذي جعل لكم الليل لباسا والنوم سباتا وجعل النهار نشورا وهو الذي أرسل الرياح نشرا بين يدي رحمته وهو الذي أرسل الرياح نشرا بين يدي رحمته وأنزلنا من السماء ماء طهورا وأنزلنا من السماء ماء طهورا لنحيي به بلدة ميتا ونسقيه مما خلقنا أنعاما وأنزلنا من السماء ماء طهورا لنحيي به بلدة ميتا ونسقيه مما خلقنا أنعاما وأناسيا كثيرا وهو الذي أرسل الرياح نشرا بين يدي رحمته وأنزلنا من السماء ماء طهورا لنحيي به بلدة ميتا لنحيي به بلدة ميتا ونسقيه مما خلقنا أنعاما وأناسيا كثيرا ولقد صرفناه بينهم ليذكروا فأبى أكثر الناس إلا كفورا ولو شئنا لبعثنا في كل قرية نذيرا ولو شئنا لبعثنا في كل قرية نذيرا فلا تطع الكافرين وجاهدهم به جهادا كبيرا وهو الذي مرج البحرين هذا عذب فرات وهذا ملح أجاج وهو الذي مرج البحرين وهو الذي مرج البحرين هذا ملح فرات وهذا ملح أجاج وهو الذي مرج البحرين هذا عذب فرات وهذا ملح أجاج وجعل بينهما برزخا وحجرا محجورا وهو الذي مرج البحرين هذا عذب فرات وهذا ملح أجاج وجعل بينهما برزخا وحجرا محجورا وهو الذي مرج البحرين هذا عذب فرات وهذا ملح أجاج وجعل بينهما برزخا وحجرا محجورا وهو الذي خلق من الماء بشرا وهو الذي خلق من الماء بشرا فجعله نسبا وصهرا وكان ربك قديرا وهو الذي خلق من الماء بشرا فجعله نسبا وصهرا وكان ربك قديرا وكان ربك قديرا ويعبدون من دون الله ما لا ينفعهم ولا يضرهم وكان الكافر على ربه ظهيرا وما أرسلناك إلا مبشرا ونذيرا وما أرسلناك إلا مبشرا ونذيرا قل ما أسألكم عليه من أجر قل ما أسألكم عليه من أجر إلا من شاء أن يتخذ إلى ربه سبيلا وتوكل على الحي الذي لا يموت وتوكل على الحي الذي لا يموت وتوكل على الحي الذي لا يموت وسبح بحمده وكفى به بذنوب عباده خبيرا وتوكل على الحي الذي لا يموت وسبح بحمده وكفى بذنوب عباده خبيرا. الذي خلق السماوات والأرض وما بينهما في 6 أيام ثم استوى على العرش. الرحمن فاسأل به خبيرا. وإذا قيل لهم اسجدوا للرحمن قالوا وما الرحمن أنسجد لما تأمرنا وزادهم نفورا. وإذا قيل لهم اسجدوا للرحمن قالوا وما الرحمن أنسجد لما تأمرنا وزادهم نفورا. تبارك الذي جعل في السماء بروجا وجعل فيها سراجا وقمرا منيرا. تبارك الذي جعل في السماء بروجا تبارك الذي جعل في السماء بروجا وجعل فيها سراجا وقمرا منيرا وهو الذي جعل الليل والنهار خلفة لمن أراد أن يذكر أو أراد شكورا وعباد الرحمن وعباد الرحمن وعباد الرحمن الذين يمشون على الأرض هونا وإذا خاطبهم الجاهلون قالوا سلاما وعباد الرحمن الذين يمشون على الأرض هونا وإذا خاطبهم الجاهلون قالوا سلاما والذين يبيتون لربهم سجدا وقياما والذين يقولون ربنا اصرف عنا عذاب جهنم ربنا اصرف عنا عذاب جهنم إن عذابها كان غراما ربنا اصرف عنا عذاب جهنم إن مستقرا ومقاما والذين إذا أنفقوا لم يسرفوا ولم يقتروا وكان بين ذلك قواما صدق الله العظيم. سبحانك يا رب سبحانك يا رب سبحان من سمع ذلون في الظلمات ونجى نوحا من الكربات سبحان من جعل النار لإبراهيم بردا وسلاما سبحان من جمد الماء للكليم سبحان من أنشأ القرون الأولى وأعادها سبحان من أحيا الأمم وأبادها سبحان من ملأ القلوب من هيبته والأرواح من عظمته وعمر الأكوان بحكمته سبحان من تفرد بالبقاء وجل عن الشركاء وأبدع كل شيء كما يشاء سبحان من أجرى الماء سبحان من سير الهوى وأقام الظلماء سبحان من شفى الشكوك باليقين وأحل النقمة بالظالمين سبحان من أحل النقمة بالظالمين سبحانك يا الله سبحان من أنزل النقمة بالمجرمين والظالمين والمتكبرين سبحان من تحمل المشركين وحمل الهدهد رسالة التوحيد فجاء بالخبر اليقين سبحانك جل جلالك يا الله سبحانك جل جلالك يا الله. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على حي على الفلاح حي على اللهم اجعلنا يا مولانا من المقبولين اللهم اجعلنا يا مولانا من المعتوقين اللهم أكرمنا ولا تهنا وأعنا ولا تهنا اللهم ارزقنا بركات شهر رمضان اللهم ارزقنا نفحات شهر رمضان اللهم ارزقنا مغفرة رمضان اللهم ارزقنا رحمة رمضان اللهم ارزقنا العتق من النار اللهم انصر الإسلام وعز المسلمين واجعل الكلمة العليا لأمة سيد المرسلين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.
chapter here is doing incredible work. Every day we're seeing clients who have been victims of discrimination, hate crimes, and harassment, young Muslim children who have been bullied at school, and elder Muslim citizens who have been victims of discrimination on the subway, on the T, or at the airport. Brothers and sisters, this Ramadan is a special time for us to come together and support our community for the year ahead. And that's why CARE's Ramadan Challenge is more important than ever. We're moving our programming online to respond to online bullying and to respond to employment and discrimination claims as well. This year, we encourage you to give your zakat and sadaqah to CARE. Give directly at carema.org, cairma.org/donate, using the link here. Thank you so much again for your support. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Allah, Allah. الله الله ما لنا مولى سوى الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله كلما ناديت يا رب قال يا عبدي أنا الله كلما ناديت يا رب قال يا عبدي أنا الله ظهر الدين المؤيد بظهور الذي أحمد ظهر الدين المؤيد بظهور الذي أحمد يا هنانا بمحمد ذلك الفضل من الله يا هنانا بمحمد ذلك الفضل من الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله كلما ناديت يا رب قال يا عبدي أنا الله كلما ناديت قال يا عبدي أنا الله لماذا هذا الغرور وراح الموت يدور لمتى هذا الغرور وراح الموت يدور تفنى ودور والذي يبقى الله تفنى ودور والذي يبقى الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله كلما ناديت يا رب قال يا عبدي أنا الله أنت وهاب العطايا ومجيب للسؤال أنت وهاب العطايا العطايا ومجيب للسؤال. أنت ربي أنت حسبي ومزيل للضلال. أنت ربي أنت حسبي ومزيل للضلال. الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله. الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله. كلما ناديت يا رب قال يا عبدي أنا الله. كلما ناديت يا رب قال يا عبدي أنا الله. طلع البدر علينا من ثنيات الوداع. طلع البدر علينا من ثنيات الوداع. وجب الشكر علينا ما دعا لله داعي. وجب الشكر علينا ما دعا لله داعي. الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله. الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله. كلما ناديت يا رب قال يا عبدي أنا الله. كلما ناديت يا رب قال يا عبدي أنا الله. شغلتني شهواتي عن صيامي عن صلاتي. شغلتني شهواتي عن صيامي عن صلاتي. أنا ضيعت حياتي في هواها يغضب الله. أنا ضيعت حياتي في هواها يغضب الله. الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله. الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله. كلما ناديت يا رب قال يا عبدي أنا الله. كلما ناديت يا رب قال يا عبدي أنا الله. يا إمام المهتدين يا شفيع المرسلين يا إمام المهتدين يا شفيع المرسلين يا حبيب الله يا رسول الله يا أحن المرسلين يا إمام المهتدين يا شفيع المرسلين يا إمام المهتدين يا شفيع المرسلين يا حبيب الله يا أحن المرسلين الكون نور في يوم ميلادك والعرش يسبح بنور جمالك الكون نور في يوم ميلادك والعرش يسبح بنور جمالك حتى الوحوش
Welcome, dear brothers and sisters. We miss you all. We miss you at the ISB and ISBC, really. And first of all, Ramadan Kareem, Ramadan Mubarak, and may Allah shower us with His mercies and blessing during those blessed days and nights. I hope you're hanging out there. I've seen lovely pictures. People decorated their homes and saying that, hey, we are praying in our home, and they've done stunning things for their kids. And please hang up there, and inshallah everything will pass, and we'll get back to our masajid very soon. So today our Q&A session is a little bit different. We've been hearing a lot about the COVID-19 and what's the nature of the virus. We interviewed Dr. Islam, who's a virologist, and now we need to hear from an expert. And when I say an expert, let me read what is this expert. Our guest today is an infectious disease physician and the medical director of Special Pathogen Unit and associate professor of medicine at Boston University School of Medicine. She oversees the medical response program for Boston University, maximum containment biosafety level 4 program, whatever this means, at National Emerging Infectious Disease Lab. She serves at the national and interagency groups focused on medical countermeasures, the intersection between public health preparedness research and clinical care for emerging pathogens. She also serves as the co-chair of the MA Partnership for Regional Disaster Health Responses, a high consequence infectious disease working group. With all that being said, she is the right person to be with us today. Please join us welcoming Dr. Nahid Bhadelia. Dr. Nahid, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wassalam and Ramadan Kareem to you and everybody else who's listening right now.
It's an honor to have you. I know that you're very busy going from one station to another, from one new channel to another. Thank you for giving us the time to be with us today, inshallah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here because this is home. This is coming back, and it's the perfect time of the year for all of us to connect.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Nahid. Dr. Nahid, let's go into this. Now, all your career you focused on hemorrhagic fever disease like Ebola. And now the whole universe is like being bombarded with the COVID-19. Are we witnessing a shift in your interest, or this is because of the nature of what's going on worldwide?
My general interest are emerging infectious diseases. And so these are diseases that we're seeing that we don't know about that jump from animals into humans. 2/3 of all the new diseases that we've seen, and we've discovered about 43 new diseases in the last 20 years alone, have all been 2/3 of those have been, things that jump from animals into humans. And so my interest is actually exactly as you said, is looking at new infections. Have been what we focused on because that is what I do at the laboratory, is the work that's done at the laboratory is viral hemorrhagic fevers. But our medical center, the 3-bed biocontainment care unit that I operate is open to any patients that come in with highly communicable diseases.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So what are the new challenges are we facing right now? What are the difference between Ebola and this COVID-19?
The one thing about, there's some commonalities, for all infectious diseases that are emerging or new. The very tough challenges of managing them are that you are learning about these diseases as you're coming up with sensible medical care, sensible public health policies, and so you're learning about how these diseases are spread, about what works in care. And so that's very similar between what we've seen with Ebola, with other viral hemorrhagic fevers, and what we're seeing with COVID. The difference with Ebola is that it's a deadlier disease. A much greater percentage of people pass away from that disease, but it is much harder to pass on to other people. As we dealt with, so I was part of the 2013, 2016 Ebola outbreak in West Africa, and then the most recent one in DRC. I was working in Uganda again on the Ebola outbreak there, and what we see is that Ebola is dangerous in those situations because of the fact that the resources are limited. The health systems are not very built, so you can't get good care to people when they need it. We always worried, all of us in my field always worried about a time where there might come another pandemic, another epidemic that was from a disease that was much easier to transmit, something that could be transmitted through droplet or through interactions without touching people. And that's what we're seeing with COVID-19. Because it's so much easier to transmit, there's just so many more patients, which can then overwhelm any health system, not just those that are resource limited, but even ones such as ourselves or anywhere else in Europe or elsewhere.
So Ebola is much more deadly than the COVID-19 we are facing right now. And
that's correct.
And actually the world is right now, I would say, like it's a lockdown. We haven't seen this in Africa with Ebola, but there's a lockdown because of this COVID-19. It's because like it's transmitted fast through droplets. And this is like making a huge impact on our healthcare system.
That's correct. And so, we don't even have a very good handle on how deadly COVID is. It certainly is not as deadly as Ebola. We think it's much, much deadlier than the seasonal influenza that we face, and it's a new disease. But there are parts of this disease that we're discovering. So the basics of this is a virus that was very similar to SARS virus that occurred at this point about 15 years ago, or a little bit more than that. And SARS was actually much harder to transmit even than this current one. This COVID-19 is transmitted by a virus called SARS-CoV-2. With this disease, it's transmitted by when people sneeze or cough and you're in the area, there's enough droplets there, you produce this liquid that's in the air around you. It doesn't travel very far, but if you're close enough, within 6 feet, someone else who comes into that and is not protected, they can take that virus into their own lungs and become sick. The other way it can be transmitted is if you touch any surfaces when you're sick and you have virus on your hands and you lay it on those surfaces. When someone else comes to those surfaces, touches them and doesn't clean their hands, and then potentially takes their hands to their face, they can transmit the disease to themselves. The concern is that because of the way this disease is, you're seeing an immense number of cases. Potentially a large number of the people who are sick right now are actually people who don't even know that they have the virus. The new things that we've found in the last month or so is that between 25 to 50% of the people may actually get this disease and be completely asymptomatic, which means they will never have symptoms. Some will have very mild symptoms. But the troublesome thing is that we have no immunity to this virus because it's completely new. And so there's a proportion of our community, who, particularly those who are older, those who have other medical conditions, that if they get this virus, it is a much tougher course. It is, you are much more likely to get sick with this. And in that, we have seen all hospitals in Boston, including my own, ward after ward has been filled with people who are very sick from COVID-19.
Help me understand that. So how come like I'm asymptomatic, I'm carrying the virus, however, I transfer this virus to someone else who got very sick and might pass away. So while I am like in a phase that asymptomatic, I don't know nothing about like even I'm a COVID positive, and I might recover without even knowing that.
Yes.
So why I'm not sick while I transmitted this to another sick person?
Yes. So, it's just the way that this virus plays out in different people, and how a virus responds depends on the person's underlying immune system. How good is their immune system in fighting off general infections? And what we know, there's many large studies, but the most recent study that's come out is from New York City, which, as you know, has been particularly hit hard. And so if the 5,700 people that they saw there, they showed that people who have high blood pressure, diabetes, those who are obese, are at risk factor to have a particularly tough course. But we have seen, I can tell you, both New York and we ourselves in Boston actually have seen many young people, some of them that have no conditions, who are still getting very sick. So we don't really quite yet understand, aside from the conditions that we know, including more advanced age, that can lead to a tough course, there's a proportion of young people who get very sick with this. And that is part of the challenge that I mentioned at the very beginning, which is that we're learning about this disease as we're responding to it. And this is a very similar challenge to what we've faced with other diseases as well. I was a infectious diseases fellow in New York City during H1N1. I was, again, on the front lines of that. And it was the same. As we're seeing people coming into the emergency room, we're learning about the disease as we're providing care.
Like I've seen people, people are telling me that the moment they get into their homes, they take off their clothes and they put it in the washing machine, in the laundry room. Is this something that is it overdone, or shall we do that? Is it like virus will stay in our shoes and our clothes, or just the hands, and even like we cover our face? That's enough.
Dr. Amar, I think that depends on what the activities are that people are doing when they're outside the house. And so if you are spending a lot of time in a crowded space and you've touched a lot of surfaces, and you're afraid that there might be contamination on your clothes, then it is perhaps good when you come in to just change that, But if you've only been outside for a short period of time, I think the consideration is, as you know, one of the recommendations that CDC has made is the fact that we wear these cloth coverings. We cover our mouths because, as you said, some of us will be asymptomatic, will not have the symptoms, but what we're still doing is we're producing this virus and putting it out in the air, and we're producing this virus and leaving it on surfaces. And so others are doing this while you're outside as well. And so what we can do when we go outside is to cover our face if we can, to keep a distance from other people particularly those who we may not know are sick or not, and then wash our hands. I make sure to also wash my hands for about 20 seconds and correctly. So when I come in the house, if I've been in the hospital, I remove all my clothing, I change it, I wash the other clothes because I don't want to bring that in-house. I wash my hands and then I wash my face. But right as I come in, I get rid of the mask or I put the mask into the wash as well. I think that particularly if you have more vulnerable people, you're sharing a home with parents or grandparents who might be sicker, you're doing that partly to keep them safe, as much as yourself.
Yeah. So how did your hospital respond to this COVID-19 up to now? You said that's word by word right now are seeing patients COVID-19. So how's your hospital responding? And at the same time, are we expecting another surge, or like now it's a time to flatten the curve and see some positive responses?
So I think maybe it's good to sort of talk about what it means to flatten the curve. What we saw was this disease, what we're discovering is that the COVID-19 was probably in the US much earlier than we thought. Even this week, we found this news that says that there are people who died of this disease at the beginning of February in California who didn't have any travel history, which means that they got it from somebody else who probably also didn't know they had this disease. And so there's a new study that says that about 5 states, including Massachusetts and the city of Boston, may have seen cases as early as January without realizing. And so what we've done, and so that means this disease is a lot more broader than we expected. And so the hospitals, our own and others, have been focused on a couple of principles. One, we have looked at what we're expecting, in terms of the number of cases that are coming in. So the concern was if everybody got sick at the same time, because it's a brand new virus, if everybody got sick, there will be just not enough beds in the hospital, not enough healthcare workers, not enough personal protective equipment, not enough medications. And so the the public health restrictions that which were put into place for social distancing and staying in the house was to allow this peak to happen, which means everybody who had already gotten infected when society was open could go through this illness. We could take care of them. And now the decision has come. We're reaching a point, and I can tell you a little bit about what my hospital has done, but we're reaching a point where we're stabilizing, and inshallah, we're sort of seeing a drop in the number of cases. But what we expect is that if we open up society again, depending on how we do the job of opening up, if we open up too quickly, we'll once again see an increase in cases because nothing has changed. There's not a vaccine, there's no medication yet. Inshallah, there will be something that we might see hopefully by the summer that might be effective. So our hospitals have focused on finding strategies to take care of huge numbers of cases at the same time. They've found new wards. They've converted entire wards into COVID-19 wards. They have obtained supply chains for personal protective equipment. We've used innovation. I'm on the incident command system for my own hospital. And so what we've done is we've looked at the models and we've tried to get supplies to meet that. The trouble is, of course, every hospital in every major city that's facing this is going through the same trouble, is looking for the same supplies. And so that has been a bit hard. We've trained healthcare workers. We've found new spaces outside the hospital. For example, Boston Medical Center operates a recovery unit for homeless patients and others who don't have anywhere to go to, who might still be infected but don't need the hospital. So I was there Wednesday actually providing care, and the numbers are still very high. There are many, many people who still have this disease. So those are some of the things that we've done. There's many others that I could go into, but the highlights are safety of healthcare workers, space for patients, finding enough supplies to provide care.
Nahid, I know that you come from a family, your father have done a lot to our community to establish a very strong foundation. I would like to give back, and if there's anything that you think our community can help, or even the people at the ISBCC, or even as a premise at the ISB or ISBC, we can help, please give us a shout. And I'm quite sure that management over there will be very much happy to help the healthcare workers that are fighting on our behalf. At the same time, Munaf, and those are our people who are viewing us. If you do have any question, please ask them, and we'll try to address Dr. Nahid in this. Dr. Nahid, you mentioned something about vaccines or medications. Are we near? We've heard a lot. Hopes comes up, and then no, it's not working, not efficient, all this stuff. Are we near by any way towards a medication or a vaccine or something that that's not we don't know about it yet? Are we near that?
Thank you for asking that. So what we've seen is, there are many medications that are already on the market for another reason. And there's some medications that are new that are not FDA approved, but all of those have to go through. People have used the ones that are available on market with patients, but it's hard to know. If you give it to one patient, it's hard to know what would have happened to that patient had you not given them the medication. Maybe the answer would have been the same. You don't know if the person recovered on their own. And so what we need is randomized controlled trials. And these are studies that allow us to either compare one drug to just standard of care or one drug to another drug and really prove that there's safety and that we're giving medications that actually make a difference. And so
how long does that take? How long do we need that time?
That takes so that's what takes time. And so currently there are randomized controlled trials. Some of them have come out that are smaller, for example, as you said, have shown not as much effectiveness as we would like for medications like hydroxychloroquine. But there are other big trials, the answers for which we're hoping for some of the drugs that are already on the market, we're hoping to see answers on whether or not they work or not within the next month. There are other drugs that randomized controlled trials are just starting on or may have just started, and we won't get answers on those by the summer. The vaccine in the US, there are two candidates. Then there's two candidates also in the international scene that are already being studied in humans, but they're in smaller studies, and we don't expect those, unfortunately, to come back with results until about 12 months, at the minimum.
Okay, so 12 months. No, we need to do double-blind clinical trials and all the stuff. From your point of view, getting all those inputs together, when do you expect that we'll go back to our lives?
I think that, I don't know that the normal, how we saw it before all of this started is going to return until after there's a vaccine. I know that's a hard thing to hear, but there will be a different normal between now and when the vaccine is available. Most states are looking at now is to open up parts of society. We can't all be inside the house the whole time, or aside from the economy, I just don't think that is probably healthy from just a survival perspective. And so the strategies are actually currently being developed on how you open a small amount of society. So more essential businesses may open, a different, more people will go out, and then you might see a spike in cases from those populations and stores and opening, and you take care of those cases. Then you open a little bit more, and then you sort of see if there's more cases that arise from that. And so in the interim, what needs to happen to open up society is to really build more infrastructure. Again, as I mentioned, we're still at the peak, and so they're hoping to allow more cases to resolve, so there's more space in the hospital before we can open. But they're also looking to make sure that we have the ability to test everybody who can be tested, who has the disease. And they're looking to give advice to businesses when they open, such as keeping a distance between people, because we are not immune still. We know from the studies that have come out from New York, from California, that many of us are still very vulnerable to this disease. And so we've not been exposed to it. Even those of us who may have had it who are asymptomatic and recovered and didn't realize, we don't know if they're immune, but most of us don't even have any signs of existing immunity yet. So what needs to happen for many businesses, there will be advice that comes out, and I think same for schools, same for mosques, about how to keep distances between people. How do we clean our environment, which mashallah we do anyway in all our communities, how to keep environments clean so we remove any virus that might be there from people visiting, and then how to quickly identify people who are sick and everybody else who might be around them who might be exposed, so that it doesn't become, a big cluster of diseases.
That's awesome. I think we have a comment from Sister Hayat. She said that, Salam, if a closed economy will eventually lead to more death due to unemployment, food insecurity, healthcare unrelated to coronavirus, etc., what are the alternatives to a closed economy? And I think this is what you just mentioned, that's at least opening, I would say that it's not our decisions. However, like you guys, you folks on the front line, and you understand, you know better what's going on. However, a stepwise approach to opening economy, I think this is while taking into consideration what's going on, and we're keeping those social distancing and safety measures in place, this might be a wise act. Is it really dependent on the federal government to expand testing to the point that we need to? This question, like from Hayat, is it dependent on the federal?
There's so much that has become politicized about this, right? Public health should not be political. And so there are different parts of the testing problem. There is the strategy of where to deploy testing, which is to do with the states themselves. In Boston is the Boston Public Health Commission, and then the hospitals. But then to do a test, you need the test itself, but then you need personal protective equipment, because when you go in to get a test, there's a healthcare worker who puts on personal protective equipment. They use an instrument that allows them, a swab that allows them to take a little bit of virus from you, or from your nose or your mouth, put it into a container that allows the virus to stay alive, to take it to the laboratory. And in the laboratory, you need reagents, you need the machines, and you need the test kit themselves. So the trouble is that there are some things in this whole equation that there are shortages on. The personal protective equipment, there's still some shortages on. The little swab that we're using, there's shortages of in Massachusetts. The containers that we're putting the virus into, there's shortages of, and all of those are actually produced at the national level. They're produced by factories, not necessarily here, but elsewhere. And so that's what takes the national, that is the responsibility of the national government, is to make sure supply chain for those aspects are created. We're in the hospitals, we're using innovative solutions, like we're trying to 3D print these swabs and then test to see if they're necessary. But really, hospitals shouldn't be doing that. We should just be taking care of patients. It should be the responsibility of public health officials, and both federal and state government, and federal government in particular, because these are supply chains of problems that are affecting everybody. So that's where the issues are. There are shortages that are affecting the tests. It's not just the tests themselves. tells us many, many things beforehand that they're missing.
Thank you very much, Dr. Magid. MashaAllah, very nice information. Thank you very much, Magid. Shadi, Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much for, yes, thank you for that. So before leaving you, let's take the hats off from being a scientist, a doctor, physician, one of the prominent ones on the front line. I would like to ask, not Dr. Nahid, I would like to ask Nahid, please, as a community member, what are the stuff that you are saying to your parents, your close ones, your family members? What message do you have, especially in this month of Ramadan? A part of like all our interview right now, all this very well scientific data and very good advices. Now, what is your look into the matter? What's like your hope into the matter? Do you see like a near future happening? Are we going to go back to our normal life soon or later during this blessed month? What message do you have for our community?
So my parents are probably tired of me talking about coronavirus, but what we've done in our home is we've tried to maintain still some separation, which of course is, Ramadan time, we open our hearts to Allah, but it's also a time that we open our hearts to each other, and it's very hard to be apart when we want to come together and give prayers, and so for now, I think that the advice that I give to my parents is while there are these restrictions in place, that we still try to wear the cloth masks when we're in the community, when we're outside, to reduce the number of times we have to go outside. And this is important for that part of our community, our members who are who may be vulnerable, who may have medical conditions, who may be older. It's particularly important for them to not be potentially exposed to somebody who might have the virus and not realize it. So reducing the number of times you have to go outside into crowds, using the measures we talked about before, and then within the house, if someone is sick, to separate them, and to make sure that you are getting them testing immediately if that's available, and at least separating them from everybody else who might be well. So I think this is a difficult time. I wish that I could join all of you for iftar tonight. This is how we generally proceed. But what we've been taught, science can answer so many questions. And then what we've been taught is that the dark, after the darkest time is when, inshallah, hope comes. And so this is not the first time that we've seen a pandemic. Unfortunately, it is our generation that's facing this, but many past generations have faced this. So we will get beyond this. There is going to be a tomorrow. Maybe it's a little later than, we all of us might want. Maybe society won't be completely normal between now and when the vaccine comes, but things will get better. As we slowly open up, it will normalize a bit more. And inshallah, next Ramadan, we will be back together again, I hope.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nahid. Really, a leader like that. May Allah bless you. We are, as a community members, we are proud and honored to have you. And we pray for Allah during those blessed days and nights to keep you and your co-workers and all the people who are working outside right now fighting this corona. Keep you safe and blessed, and thank you very much for showing in our show, and we really appreciate all what you are doing. Thank you very much.
It is an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Assalamu alaikum.
الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله كلما ناديت يا رب قال يا عبيدي أنا الله كلما ناديت يا رب قال يا عبيدي أنا الله ظهر الدين المؤيد بظهور الهدي أحمد يا هنانا بمحمد ذلك الفضل من الله يا هنانا بمحمد ذلك الفضل من الله 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 ما لا مولى سوى الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله كلما ناديت يا رب قال يا عبيدي أنا الله كلما ناديت يا رب قال يا عبيدي أنا الله لما تاب الغرور وراح الموت يدور لما تاب الغرور وراح الموت يدور تفنى ودور والذي يبقى الله تفنى ودور والذي يبقى الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله كلما ناديت يا رب قال يا الله أنت وهاب العطايا ومجيب للسؤال أنت وهاب العطايا ومجيب للسؤال أنت ربي أنت حسبي ومزيل للضلال أنت ربي أنت حسبي ومزيل للضلال الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله كلما ناديت يا رب قال يا عبدي أنا الله كلما ناديت يا رب قال يا عبدي أنا الله طلع البدر علينا من الوداع طلع البدر علينا من ثنيات الوداع وجب الشكر علينا ما دعا لله داعي وجب الشكر علينا ما دعا لله داعي الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله كلما ناديت يا رب قال يا عبدي أنا الله كلما ناديت يا رب قال يا شغلني شهري عن صيامي عن صلاتي شهادتي صلاتي أنا ضيعت حياتي في هواها يغضب الله أنا ضيعت حياتي في هواها يغضب الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله 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 ما لنا مولى سوى الله كلما ناديت يا رب قال يا عبدي أنا الله كلما ناديت يا رب قال يا عبدي أنا الله يا إمام المهتدين يا شفيع المرسلين يا إمام المهتدين يا شفيع المرسلين يا حبيب الله يا رسول الله يا أحن المرسلين يا إمام المهتدين يا شفيع المرسلين يا إمام المهتدين يا شفيع المرسلين يا حبيب الله يا رسول الله يا أحن المرسلين الكون نور في يوم ميلادك والعرش سبح بنور جمالك الكون نور في يوم ميلادك والعرش سبح بنور جمالك حتى كانت أمينة حتى الوحوش كانت أمينة لما انت جيت بالنور علينا يا حبيب الله يا رسول الله يا أحن المرسلين يا إمام المهتدين يا شفيع المرسلين يا إمام المهتدين يا شفيع المرسلين يا حبيب الله يا رسول الله يا أحن المرسلين لم تجد بمحبتك كل لبى دعوتك لما انت جيت بمحبتك الكل لبى دعوتك حتى العجم سابوا الصنم وأمنوا بالدين الجديد لما انت جيت بمحبتك الكل لبى دعوتك لما امتديت بمحبتك الكل لبى دعوتك، حتى العجم سابوا الصنم وأمنوا بالدين الجديد. يا حبيب الله يا رسول الله يا أحن المرسلين يا إمام المهتدين يا شفيع المرسلين يا إمام المهتدين يا شفيع المرسلين يا حبيب الله يا رسول الله يا أحن المرسلين. وإذا صرفت أبصارهم تلقاء أصحاب النار قالوا ربنا لا تجعلنا مع القوم الظالمين. ونادى أصحاب الأعراف رجالا يعرفونهم بسيماهم قالوا ما أغنى عنكم جمعكم وما كنتم تستكبرون هؤلاء الذين أقسمتم لا ينالهم الله برحمة ادخلوا الجنة لا خوف عليكم ولا أنتم تحزنون. ونادى أصحاب النار أصحاب الجنة أن أفيضوا علينا من الماء أن أفيضوا علينا من الماء أو مما رزقكم الله قالوا إن الله حرمهما على الكافرين الذين اتخذوا دينهم لهوا ولعبا وغرتهم الحياة الدنيا فاليوم ننساهم كما نسوا لقاء يومهم هذا وما كانوا بآياتنا يجحدون ولقد جئناهم بكتاب فصلناه على علم هدى ورحمة لقوم يؤمنون هل ينظرون إلا تأويله يوم يأتي تأويله يقول الذين نسوه من قبل قد جاءت رسل ربنا بالحق فهل لنا من شفعاء فيشفعوا لنا أو نرد فنعمل غير الذي كنا نعمل قد خسروا أنفسهم وضل عنهم ما كانوا يفترون إن ربكم الله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض في ستة أيام ثم استوى على العرش يغشي الليل النهار يطلبه حثيثا والشمس والقمر والنجوم مسخرات بأمره ألا له الخلق والأمر تبارك الله رب العالمين ادعوا ربكم تضرعا وخفية إنه لا يحب المعتدين ولا تفسدوا في الأرض بعد إصلاحها وادعوه خوفا وطمعا إن رحمة الله قريب من المحسنين وهو الذي يرسل الرياح بشرا بين يدي رحمته حتى إذا أقلت سحابا ثقالا سقناه لبلد ميت فأنزلنا به الماء فأخرجنا به من كل الثمرات كذلك نخرج الموتى لعلكم تذكرون والبلد الطيب يخرج نباته بإذن ربه والذي خبث لا يخرج إلا نكدا كذلك نصرف الآيات لقوم يشكرون لقد أرسلنا نوحا إلى قومه فقال يا قوم اعبدوا الله ما لكم من إله إني أخاف عليكم عذاب يوم عظيم. قال الملأ من قومه إنا لنراك في ضلال مبين. قال يا قوم ليس بي ضلالة ولكني رسول من رب العالمين أبلغكم رسالات ربي وأنصح لكم وأعلم من الله ما لا تعلمون. أوعجبتم أن جاءكم ذكر من ربكم على رجل منكم لينذركم ولتتقوا ولعلكم ترحمون. فكذبوه فأنجيناه والذين معه في الفلك وأغرقنا الذين كذبوا بآياتنا إنهم كانوا قوما عمين. وإلى عاد أخاهم هودا قال يا قوم اعبدوا الله ما لكم من إله غيره أفلا تتقون. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنما مثل الحياة الدنيا كماء أنزلناه من السماء فاختلط به نبات الأرض مما يأكل الناس والأنعام حتى إذا أخذت الأرض زخرفها وزينت وظن أهلها أنهم قادرون عليها أتاها أمرنا ليلا أو نهارا فجعلناها حصيدا كأن لم تغن بالأمس كذلك نفصل الآيات لقوم يتفكرون. والله يدعو إلى دار السلام ويهدي من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. للذين أحسنوا الحسنى وزيادة ولا يرهق وجوههم قتر ولا ذلة أولئك أصحاب الجنة هم فيها خالدون. والذين كسبوا السيئات جزاء سيئة بمثلها وترهقهم ذلة ما لهم من الله من عاصم كأنما أغشيت وجوههم قطعا من الليل مظلما أولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. ويوم نحشرهم جميعا ثم نقول للذين أشركوا ثم نقول للذين أشركوا مكانكم أنتم وشركاؤكم فزيّلنا بينهم وقال شركاؤهم ما كنتم إيانا تعبدون فكفى بالله شهيدا بيننا وبينكم إن كنا عن عبادتكم لغافلين هنالك تبلو كل نفس ما أسلفت وردوا إلى الله مولاهم الحق وضل عنهم ما كانوا يفترون قل من يرزقكم من السماء والأرض أمن يملك السمع والأبصار ومن يخرج الحي من الميت ويخرج الميت من الحي ومن يدبر الأمر فسيقولون الله فقل أفلا تتقون فذلكم الله ربكم الحق فماذا بعد الحق إلا الضلال فأنى تصرفون كذلك حقت كلمة ربك على الذين فسقوا أنهم لا يؤمنون قل هل من شركائكم من يبدأ الخلق ثم يعيده قل الله يبدأ الخلق ثم يعيده فأنى تؤفكون قل هل من شركائكم من يهدي إلى الحق قل الله يهدي للحق أفمن يهدي إلى الحق أحق أن يتبع أمن لا يهدي إلا أن يهدى فما لكم كيف تحكمون وما يتبع أكثرهم إلا ظنا إن الظن لا يغني من الحق شيئا إن الله عليم بما يفعلون وما كان هذا القرآن أن يفترى من دون الله ولكن تصديق الذي بين يديه وتفصيل الكتاب لا ريب فيه من رب العالمين أم يقولون افتراه قل فأتوا بسورة مثله وادعوا من استطعتم من دون الله إن كنتم صادقين بل كذبوا بما لم يحيطوا بعلمه ولما يأتهم تأويله كذلك كذب الذين من قبلهم فانظر كيف كان عاقبة الظالمين ومنهم من يؤمن به ومنهم من لا يؤمن به وربك أعلم بالمفسدين وإن كذبوك فقل لي عملي ولكم عملكم أنتم بريئون مما أعمل وأنا بريء مما تعملون ومنهم من يستمعون إليك أفأنت تسمع الصم ولو كانوا لا يعقلون ومنهم من ينظر إليك أفأنت تهدي العمي ولو كانوا لا يبصرون إن الله لا يظلم الناس شيئا ولكن الناس أنفسهم يظلمون ويوم يحشرهم كأن لم يلبثوا إلا ساعة من النهار يتعارفون بينهم قد خسر الذين كذبوا بلقاء الله وما كانوا مهتدين وإما نرينك بعض الذي نعدهم أو نتوفينك فإلينا مرجعهم ثم الله شهيد على ما يفعلون ولكل أمة رسول فإذا جاء رسولهم قضي بينهم بالقسط وهم لا يظلمون ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين قل لا أملك لنفسي ضرا ولا نفعا إلا ما شاء الله لكل أمة أجل إذا جاء أجلهم فلا يستأخرون ساعة ولا يستقدمون قل أرأيتم إن أتاكم عذابه بياتا أو نهارا ماذا يستعجل منه المجرمون أثم إذا ما وقع آمنتم به الآن وقد كنتم به تستعجلون ثم قيل للذين ظلموا ذوقوا عذاب الخلد هل تجزون إلا بما كنتم تكسبون ويستنبئونك أحق هو قل إي وربي إنه لحق وما أنتم بعاجزين صدق الله العظيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإذا صرفت أبصارهم تلقاء أصحاب النار قالوا ربنا لا تجعلنا مع القوم الظالمين ونادى أصحاب الأعراف رجالا يعرفونهم بسيماهم قالوا ما أغنى عنكم جمعكم وما كنتم تستكبرون هؤلاء الذين أقسمتم لا ينالهم الله برحمة ادخلوا الجنة لا خوف عليكم ولا أنتم تحزنون ونادى أصحاب النار أصحاب الجنة أن أفيضوا علينا من الماء خلقكم الله قالوا إن الله حرمهما على الكافرين الذين اتخذوا دينهم لهوا ولعبا وغرتهم الحياة الدنيا فاليوم ننساهم كما نسوا لقاء يومهم هذا وما كانوا بآياتنا يجحدون ولقد جئناهم بكتاب فصلناه على علم هدى ورحمة لقوم يؤمنون هل ينظرون إلا تأويله يوم يأتي تأويله يقول الذين نسوه من قبل قد جاءت رسل ربنا بالحق فهل لنا من شفعاء فيشفعوا لنا أو نرد فنعمل غير الذي كنا نعمل قد خسروا أنفسهم وضل عنهم ما كانوا يفترون إن ربكم الله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض في ستة أيام ثم استوى على العرش يغشي الليل النهار يطلبه حثيثا والشمس والقمر والنجوم مسخرات بأمره ألا له الخلق والأمر تبارك الله رب العالمين ادعوا ربكم تضرعا وخفية إنه لا يحب المعتدين ولا تفسدوا في الأرض بعد إصلاحها وادعوه خوفا وطمعا إن رحمة الله قريب من المحسنين وهو الذي يرسل الرياح بشرا بين يدي رحمته حتى إذا أقلت سحابا ثقالا سقناه لبلد ميت فأنزلنا به الماء فأخرجنا به من كل الثمرات كذلك نخرج الموتى لعلكم تذكرون والبلد الطيب يخرج نباته بإذن ربه والذي خبث لا يخرج إلا نكدا كذلك هم يشكون لقد أرسلنا نوحا إلى قومه فقال يا قوم اعبدوا الله ما لكم من إله غيره إني أخاف عليكم عذاب عظيم. قال الملأ من قومه إنا لنراك في ضلال مبين. قال يا قوم ليس بي ضلالة ولكني رسول من رب العالمين أبلغكم رسالات ربي وأنصح لكم وأعلم من الله ما لا تعلمون. أوعجبتم أن جاءكم ذكر من ربكم على رجل منكم لينذركم ولتتقوا ولعلكم ترحمون. فكذبوه فأنجيناه والذين معه في الفلك وأغرقنا الذين كذبوا بآياتنا إنهم كانوا قوما عمين. وإلى عاد أخاهم هودا قال يا قوم اعبدوا الله ما لكم من إله غيره أفلا تتقون. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنما مثل الحياة الدنيا كماء أنزلناه من السماء فاختلط به نبات الأرض مما يأكل الناس والأنعام حتى إذا أخذت الأرض زخرفها وزينت وظن أهلها أنهم قادرون عليها أتاها أمرنا ليلا أو نهارا فجعلناها حصيدا كأن لم تغن بالأمس كذلك نفصل الآيات لقوم يتفكرون. والله يدعو إلى دار السلام ويهدي من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. للذين أحسنوا الحسنى وزيادة ولا يرهق وجوههم قتر ولا ذلة أولئك أصحاب الجنة هم فيها خالدون. والذين كسبوا السيئات جزاء سيئة بمثلها وترهقهم ذلة ما لهم من الله من عاصم كأنما أغشيت وجوههم قطعا من الليل مظلما أولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. ويوم نحشرهم جميعا ثم نقول ثم نقول للذين أشركوا مكانكم أنتم وشركاؤكم فزيّلنا بينهم وقال شركاؤهم ما كنتم إيانا تعبدون فكفى بالله شهيدا بيننا وبينكم إن كنا عن عبادتكم لغافلين هنالك تبلو كل نفس ما أسلفت وردوا إلى الله مولاهم الحق وضل عنهم ما كانوا يفترون قل من يرزقكم من السماء والأرض أمن يملك السمع والأبصار ومن يخرج الحي من الميت ويخرج الميت من الحي ومن يدبر الأمر فسيقولون الله فقل أفلا تتقون فذلكم الله ربكم الحق فماذا بعد الحق إلا الضلال فأنى تصرفون كذلك حقت كلمة ربك على الذين فسقوا أنهم لا يؤمنون قل هل من شركائكم من يبدأ الخلق ثم يعيده قل الله يبدأ الخلق ثم يعيده فأنى تؤفكون قل هل من شركائكم من يهدي إلى الحق قل الله يهدي للحق أفمن يهدي إلى الحق أحق أن يتبع أمن لا يهدي إلا أن يهدى فما لكم كيف تحكمون وما يتبع أكثرهم إلا ظنا إن الظن لا يغني من الحق شيئا إن الله عليم بما يفعلون وما كان هذا القرآن أن يفترى من دون الله ولكن تصديق الذي بين يديه وتفصيل الكتاب لا ريب فيه من رب العالمين أم يقولون افتراه قل فأتوا بسورة مثله وادعوا من استطعتم من دون الله إن كنتم صادقين بل كذبوا بما لم يحيطوا بعلمه ولما يأتهم تأويله كذلك كذب الذين من قبلهم فانظر كيف كان عاقبة الظالمين ومنهم من يؤمن به ومنهم من لا يؤمن به وربك أعلم بالمفسدين وإن كذبوك فقل لي عملي ولكم عملكم أنتم بريئون مما أعمل وأنا بريء مما تعملون يستمعون إليك أفأنت تسمع الصم ولو كانوا لا يعقلون
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على حي على الفلاح حي على الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رضي الله تعالى عنهم وعن كافة المؤمنين. Good evening, dear believers. Welcome, brothers and sisters, to another evening of our nightly Quranic reflections during this Ramadan. Tonight, we're pleased to bring to you some reflections about the 20th part of the Quran, Juz 20. Alhamdulillah, things are progressing by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Juz 20 is of a different flavor. It's cut from a different mold than some of the other parts of the Quran that we've discussed in the past. It picks up with the last part of Surah Naml of chapter 27 of the Quran on the ant. So it, from verse 55, verse 56 to the end, it covers the rest of that chapter. And also the main part of the Juz, the main part is with chapter 28 of the Quran. And chapter 28 is called Surah Al-Qasas, right? Or the narratives or the stories. And in this chapter of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, sort of wraps up, the core aspect of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is getting at with the story of Moses alayhi salam and all of the prophets, all of the Anbiya. And then Juz 20, it ends with about the first 45 verses of chapter 29 in the Quran. And chapter 29 in the Quran is called Al-Ankabut, which is the spider. And so there's a wonderful, profound verse in this chapter of the Quran about the spider and the spider's web. Now, let's begin with Surah Al-Qasas, chapter 28. And as we journey through chapter 28, Surah Al-Qasas in the Quran, dear believers, we see that this is a new chapter. We see new chapters in this old story about the life of Prophet Moses, peace and blessings be upon him. And we see new events that happen that we did not come across before. So, for example, we understand from this chapter 28 tells us why Prophet Moses fled from Egypt, right? The incident with him accidentally taking the life of someone. We understand how he met his wife, for example, where he fled to Midian in northwestern Arabia, and he fled to the land of Midian, and he helped out two young women who happened to be the daughters of Prophet Shu'aib. In the Bible, Prophet Shu'aib goes by a different name. In the biblical sources, his name is Jethro. Right? So Prophet Shu'aib or Jethro, alayhi salam, peace and blessings be upon him, as he's mentioned in the Bible, offers the hand in marriage of one of his daughters to Musa alayhi salam, in exchange for him working as a shepherd on the land in Midian on his property for a period of 8 to 10 years, between 8 and 10 years. 8 is the minimum, 10 years is the maximum, left up to Prophet Musa alayhi salam, to extend that period. And Prophet Musa extends that period. And here is his the beginning of his, shall we say, his also not only shepherding the flock of Shu'aib, but also Prophet Shu'aib, mentors Moses and mentors Musa alayhi salam and prepares him for what is to become his task as a prophet of God. Although at this time Musa alayhi salam obviously has no idea about this. We know he's married, and he takes he's on the way back to Egypt when he encounters divine revelation, and he's taken to a new task in life, a new goal and a new mandate, a new vocation. He becomes a messenger of Allah. We understand from the verses as well, there are new details about Pharaoh. We also know from verse 38 in Surah Al-Qasas, if you look at verse 38, has something very quite interesting that Pharaoh asks his palace engineers and his court to construct for him a palace, so that he can climb up to the top, and so that he can see this God of Moses, right? And what we are told through various contemporary sources of the commentary of the Quran is that this tower, which is mentioned in chapter 38 of the Quran to be built by Moses, is actually the pyramids. What we see today is the pyramids, right? So, and Allah Ta'ala knows best, but the pyramids in Giza in Egypt are those structures that Pharaoh asked to be built by his entourage, his engineers, to go have a conversation and to get a glimpse of the God of Moses. And so in this case, this Jews introduces to us the signs of the pyramid and the pieces of the Giza pyramid, the Grand Pyramid in Giza, as well as the other pyramids, that these are signs of the traces of Pharaoh, and the legacy of Moses and Pharaoh. And so the lesson behind this story, these final details, this chapter here is the last chapter in the Quran that mentions the final details of the life of Prophet Moses, Prophet Musa alayhi salam, and Pharaoh as it relates to Pharaoh. And these final details are wrapped up in this chapter. After this chapter, you don't get any further details or new details about the story between Musa and Pharaoh. All right. So up until up until Jews 20, or the 20th part, the story of Moses and Pharaoh is broken up into bits and pieces and is told in different ways, different aspects, different parts of his life, different narratives, different parts of the life of the event are broken up into these 20 Jews. Now at Jews 20, at part 20 of the Quran, we finally get the last piece of the puzzle. Now, Musa alayhi salam is invoked throughout the Quran all the way to the end, yes, but understand what we're saying. The narrative between Musa and Pharaoh, this is the last piece of the puzzle. This is the last piece of information that we're given in the Quran that is brand new. After this point, they're just reminders, right? So this is very important. This closes the loop in the narrative, in the story of Prophet Moses, Musa alayhi salam, and Pharaoh. Allah tells us about the nature of this story and what goes on, what went on in this story, and also introduces another piece of information, which is Moses' cousin, Qarun. Right? So Qarun is Moses' cousin. He's the Qarun, Moses' cousin, not Harun, not his brother, his cousin, the son of his uncle. Qarun was the son of his uncle, who was given so much wealth and sort of the keys to the kingdom. And he was jealous of Musa alayhi salam because Musa was a prophet and received revelation, and so he was jealous, of his cousin. And what later happens is that in the Quran, in this chapter, we are told by Allah Ta'ala that he thought that because of his knowledge and because of his wealth, that he would live forever, that he was not subject to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala's rule, that he became arrogant. And Allah mentions the earth swallowed Qarun. The earth swallowed him and all of his wealth, right? And this happened, what we later learned from the Prophet, this is not in the surah, not in the chapter, but it is in the commentary of the chapter, that the Prophet explains to us that Musa alayhi salam went to his cousin, went to Qarun to collect zakat, right? Because all of the prophets had to, their communities were bound by prayer and zakat. We've already talked about that. So he went to collect his zakat, and Qarun refused to pay zakat. He absolutely refused. And in his refusal, he became arrogant, and he started to spread rumors in the community about Musa alayhi salam. And the rumors that he spread involved accusing the chastity of Musa alayhi salam, and started to spread lies about Prophet Musa, and started to spread gossip that he was not chaste, that he had done this and he had done that with this person and that woman and this, that, and the other. He started to spread gossip, and because of that arrogance and that slander of the Prophet of Moses, Musa alayhi salam, Allah Ta'ala caused the earth to open up. It swallowed Qarun, and it swallowed all of his wealth and everything. And Allah mentions this for a very, very particular reason. That following the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and following, with respect to the previous communities, involves not only doing what they ask us to do, but holding them in great esteem. Ta'zeem, holding them in great esteem and great honor. And so this is part and parcel of following the prophets, because the prophets, the Anbiya, the prophets and messengers of Allah Ta'ala are a unique gift from Allah Ta'ala. And therefore, when Allah Ta'ala gives us gifts, He expects us to honor those gifts. We talked about honoring the sacred rights of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, the sacred boundaries of Allah Ta'ala in Surah Al-Hajj, chapter 22 of the Quran a few nights ago. One of the greatest gifts, the sacred gifts of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, are the prophets. And therefore, the greatest blessing that we have been given is not wealth, contrary to what Harun thought. He thought the greatest blessing that a person could have is material wealth. Material wealth, while being a blessing of Allah Ta'ala, is not the greatest blessing of Allah Ta'ala. The greatest blessings of Allah Ta'ala are the Anbiya and the messages that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has given us, right? Which inform us what to do with our wealth, which informs us about how to live our life, etc. And so the greatest blessing is the honor and the treatment and the following of the prophets and messengers of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. When we violate that, if we violate those blessings and we deny those blessings, then we open ourselves up to the displeasure of Allah Ta'ala. And that's why Allah Ta'ala tells us in this chapter, وَكَمْ أَهْلَكْنَا مِنْ قَرْيَةٍ بَطِرَتْ مَعِيشَتَهَا. How many towns, right? How many towns have we brought to ruin because they have squandered and wasted and denied and rejected and just devalued the ways of life and the blessings that we have given them. So this is very important. And one of the most profound gifts that Allah gives us, also in addition to the prophets and messengers, just in the material sense, in the physical sense at least, is night and day. Allah tells us in this chapter of the Quran about the tremendous blessing of the night and the day, how it's a blessing and it's a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which means the passage of time. That time in and of itself is one of the greatest blessings Allah has given us. Why? Because it's limited. Remember, anything that's scarce, that's in limited quality, is very, very, very valuable. You don't believe me? Look at the meat situation right now in the United States. There's a shortage of a meat supply, and the prices have gone up. Right? Anytime there's a rare, something is rare or precious, or there's a shortage, it becomes more valuable. Right? So time is one of the most valuable things we have, because there's not only is there a shortage of it, but more importantly, we don't know how much of that shortage we have. And therefore, when Allah Ta'ala in this chapter talks about the value and the treasure and the beauty and the blessings of the day and night, He's talking about the value of time. And that the best way that we can use our time is to understand the narratives in this Quran, i.e. the qasas, which this chapter is called, qasas, the narratives, the stories. Understand those stories and take the lesson from those stories, right? Take the lesson. And what's the lesson? The lesson is that don't squander, don't waste, don't deny, don't sleep on, don't forget about the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Take all the blessings of Allah seriously, whether they're physical blessings like wealth and health or wealth and property, or immaterial blessings like health in time, for example, spiritual blessings like the Prophet's message, guidance, hidayah, iman, faith, etc. Right? All the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we have, take them seriously, employ those blessings for our betterment in this life and in the next. And we have to understand this, because we are going home. That's the point of this. This chapter ends on that note. We are returning home. This is not our home where we are right now. This is our temporary home, but it is not our finite home. This is what the Islamic tradition teaches us, that we have a more finite, more perfect, more pleasurable home that we are on our way to. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He will return us home. It's the most beautiful verse that is mentioned at the end of this chapter. And it's in verse 85. I want you to highlight it, write it down, underscore it, whatever, keep it in mind. Verse 85, where Allah ta'ala says, إِنَّ الَّذِي فَرَضَ عَلَيْكَ الْقُرْآنَ لَرَادُّكَ إِلَى الْمَعَادِ. Indeed, the one that has obliged this Quran, that has placed this Quran to you as something to carry, the one that has put this Quran in your midst, the one that has made this Quran a duty for you to follow, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has made this Quran a part of your life, لَرَادُكَ إِلَى الْمَعَادِ, He surely will return you home. Right? The context of this verse is the Prophet ﷺ was migrating to Medina with Abu Bakr, and he was on the boundaries of Al-Juhfa, which is the boundaries of Medina, right before he gets into Medina, the city limits, right? And he, right before he crosses into the border zone of Medina, he looks back to where he was walking with Abu Bakr, and he starts to feel sad about having left Mecca and feel sad about missing home, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this verse at that time, إِنَّ الَّذِي فَرَضَ عَلَيْكَ الْقُرْآنَ, that the one who has made this Quran a duty for you is the same one who لَرَادُكَ إِلَى الْمَعَادِ, is the same one who's going to bring you back home. Don't you worry about this. You're going home, right? And some of the scholars mention that the Prophet ﷺ was not only had husn and sadness and grief for being a migrant, for having to leave his home, but also for his people having to leave their home, and more importantly, for him having to be his desire for that connection in Mecca to be connected to the afterlife as well. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was telling him, we're going to send you home not only to Mecca, back to Mecca, but also home back to Jannah. And this is the lesson for us as well, that the one that has given us a duty to perform this Quran, to act on this Quran, Allah, that same one who's given us that responsibility is the same one, meaning Allah Ta'ala, who will bring us home. All right, so this is the key to this chapter. It's a very beautiful chapter. And finally, brothers and sisters, is Surah Al-Ankabut. And in Surah Al-Ankabut, it reminds us of just what Allah, the punishments that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had invoked on all of the different people in the past who had denied Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But more importantly, in verse 41, this is the take home, this is the lesson, that Allah says that those who associate partners with Allah, those that deny Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and had set up partners and idols with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that those people, they are like the spider that constructs a weak home. And the weakest and most flimsiest of homes is the home of the spider. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala invokes us to think about what the spider constructs as a form of safety and protection. What are the structures that we are in, the systems that we are erecting to support ourselves, that there is no protector, there is no system, there is no fortress that is strong enough to defend us and protect us when we associate partners with Allah. If we deny Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we go against the teachings of the Quran, there is no fortress that can stand. There is no protection that can shield us. All right, it's the same level of protection of the spider's web. The spider thinks the web is so strong because it can collect insects. Well, just because it can collect insects doesn't mean it's a strong structure. Just because it has a function doesn't mean it's good enough for everything. And so the idea of what we worship, the idea of the fact of denying the existence of Allah or worshiping other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those things really place us in a predicament where we have false ideas about our protection. We are quite vulnerable on the contrary. So this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in this verse, and he gives us community after community after community who have done this, who have erected false gods, who have sought false protections, thinking that they were sheltered in their wealth, thinking that they were protected because of their political connections, thinking that they were safe because they fell back to the practices of their forefathers. All of these things, brothers and sisters, were no good to protect the people of the past. What protects us is our following the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ. What protects us is adhering to the Prophet ﷺ's teaching, and what protects us, brothers and sisters, is making sure that we stay the course. So brothers and sisters, in closing, what we need to understand is that the lesson of the spider, the dars of the spider, the lesson of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us here is that when you build, when you construct, when you try to establish something, whether it's establish your home, building your lifestyle, building your goals, when you make plans, when you have things that you're trying to achieve, make sure you build your construction, your dreams, your goals, your actions, your habits, your plans on solid ground. Make sure they're on solid ground. And that solid ground, the firmest ground that you could build something off of, brothers and sisters, is the ground that has been established by the Prophet ﷺ in the teachings of all the Anbiya in the past. And use the Quran, use the legacy of the Prophet ﷺ as a clear example in this regard. And this harkens back to the dars about the Masjid al-Dirar, which is the masjid that was built on a weak foundation. We talked about that in chapter 9, that building a structure requires a solid foundation. And in chapter 9, Allah talked about the foundation that is necessary is a foundation of taqwa. Right now, in this chapter, in Ankabut chapter 29, what's being addressed is not the foundation; it's the structure itself. Right. So once you have a structure or a foundation that's built on taqwa, on a solid foundation, the actual walls have to be solid. The roof has to be solid. The actual structure itself has to be meaningful, has to be fortified. And the way it's fortified, one of the best ways it's fortified is through, first of all, honoring the blessings that Allah Ta'ala has given us. And second of all, following the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the messages that he's taught, that he's brought us, and the lessons in the Quran, inshallah ta'ala. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us. I will end a little bit early tonight, inshallah ta'ala, because this dars, brothers and sisters, requires all of us to think deeply about it. There's a little bit less that's packed in because the task of thinking deeply about this is invoked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is called a methal. This is called an example. This is called a metaphor. It's called a dars for us. A methal is a likeness or an example of something that Allah wants us to think deeply about. So Allah wants us to think deeply about what we build, what was built in the past, and the fact that it was like, don't build something like the spider. Don't build something like, a weak, that's based on a weak foundation. Don't make your lives weak. Don't make your, the goals that you have weak. Don't make the dreams and the means by which you pursue your goals. Don't make those things built off of weak structures, weak faith, weak practice, weak prayers, weak zakat, weak fasting. Don't build flimsy structures and then try to hide around those actions, those structures, those amal, those actions, thinking that you're safe and you're fortified. Oh, I've prayed my prayer really quickly and I'm good to go. No, that's a weak prayer that you've offered. That's a flimsy structure. Construct something, build something that is solid. Pray like the Prophet prayed, fast like the Prophet fast, tell the truth like the Prophet told the truth, do good things like the Prophet did. Build solid structures, build solid. Man, this is how we have to operate. Just because our actions might bring some benefit, just like the spider's web might catch the fly, does not mean that the structure itself is solid. So this is the kind of thinking that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to think deeply about. This is what Allah ta'ala invokes in this juice, ya Rab, dear brothers and sisters. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us people who build strong structures on strong foundations. Now, by structures, we mean actions, we mean a'mal, we mean deeds. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us to be people that build strong futures for ourselves and for this deen, and not to become deluded in materialism and the material forms of success that we have. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to always, always, always demonstrate gratitude and shukr for the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted us and given us. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to continue to make our journey through the Quran meaningful, beneficial, and one where we can act on and implement the Quran in this life so that we may reap the benefits in the next life. And dear brothers and sisters, join me tomorrow night, inshallah, as we continue through the juz, through the Quran, as we discover what's in store for us with juz 21 for tomorrow night. And this will be the beginning, brothers and sisters, of our pivot and our journey, inshallah ta'ala, to the last 10 nights of Ramadan. The last 10 juz have something very, very, very special in store for us. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وآخر الدعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is John Robinson encouraging you this Ramadan to support CARE Massachusetts, the Council on American Islamic Relations. Your local chapter here is doing incredible work. Every day we're seeing clients who have been victims of discrimination, hate crimes, and harassment, young Muslim children who have been bullied at school, and elder Muslim citizens who have been victims of discrimination on the subway, on the T, or at the airport. Brothers and sisters, this Ramadan is a special time for us to come together and support our community for the year ahead. And that's why CARE's Ramadan Challenge is more important than ever. We're moving our programming online to respond to online bullying and to respond to employment and discrimination claims as well. This year, we encourage you to give your zakat and sadaqah to CARE. Give directly at carema.org, cairma.org/donate, using the link here. Thank you so much again for your support. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
الحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله. As I usually say, it is an honor to be here today. Alhamdulillah. In the text, there might be an issue of sound. I'm not sure if this will change the quality of the sound. Perhaps somebody will let me know, inshallah. Okay, better. Good to know. Okay, alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, we've been discussing the spiritual dimensions of fasting. And as we've passed the halfway point in the month, and of course we realize we could spend so much more time talking about this subject, we'll turn tonight to the spiritual dimensions of prayer, as of course this is a time for so many of our acts of worship to be performed and to be performed with greater attention, greater emphasis on excellence in these acts of worship. So what we had discussed prior to tonight was how the purification of the heart, how fasting is a very, very important opportunity and cause, a factor in the purification of the heart. That is to say, it is a great opportunity to emphasize the purification of the heart, the purification of the soul, because of the power of that. Because fasting breaks so many of our strong desires, it breaks so many of our bad habits. It really forces us to disrupt our usual patterns and to have patience in dealing with the experiences of fasting and working in daily life. We talked about how one of the meritorious acts of the fasting were specifically the added emphasis on controlling speech, in addition to fasting from food and drink and so on, we also fast and add speech. So getting a text because it's probably done. Perhaps we can pause for a moment and we can see if I can fix this. Okay, we'll be back in just a moment. We'll try to fix the audio.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Inshallah, we'll try this again. Just double check, make sure we have. Okay. There we go. Sorry about that. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. We finally found a device that will work. I hope, inshallah, you've stayed with us. So we'll jump right in where we left off. As we mentioned before, we've been discussing how fasting is an opportune time to address the spiritual diseases of the heart and to purify oneself of them. And we mentioned a few of these, the sins of related to food, the overeating and eating from the haram. We also mentioned the idea of the sins of the tongue, falling into base and haram speech, backbiting and tailbearing and so on. And we also talked about anger for the sake of the ego and how that can burn up one's spiritual states. In the interest of time, we'll move back to move on to the next topic. The business of spiritual purification is a perpetual state for us. So we got a taste of some of the chapters that are especially connected to the subject of fasting and finding the spiritual dimensions of it. We focused on the purification of the heart and how purification of the heart softens one's spiritual heart, opens it up for the impact and the effect of acts of worship, including fasting. So merely abstaining from food and drink will not suffice in reaping the full benefits and experiences of fasting. Likewise, when we turn to the ritual prayer, to the salat, there is a similar emphasis there. There is an outward element. There are the proper recitation of the Quran. There's the standing, the bowing, the prostrating. All of these have important meanings to them, and engaging in them in and of themselves is a disruption from one's daily patterns. So by merely it's no small thing when I say merely, but by merely doing one's ablutions and standing, bowing, and prostrating in prayer, if all one gains from that is movement and focus, is movement and separation from one's daily activities, in and of itself, there's a benefit from that. Or there's a benefit in that. In and of itself, that disruption of daily activities, to do some movement, to stand, to bow, to prostrate, even to recite some Quran, just even if you aren't aware of the meanings of it, the fact that you've turned off the television, the fact that you've stopped whatever it was that you were doing, and stopped, and entered into this space of movement, one can imagine a benefit to it. However, it is not the intended benefit of the salat. The mere movements of the body, the mere movement of the tongue, the mere pronunciation of sounds, in and of itself is not sufficient. So what this tells us is that there is an inward dimension to it. And we can, before we even get to the concentration on meanings and recitation of Quran, or the expressions of dhikr, of saying Allahu Akbar, and Subhana Rabbil A'la, and so on. Before we even get to declaring God's greatness and glorifying God, these statements of declaring God's greatness, these statements of glorification, before we even get to the meanings of these, we also have actions that have meanings, right? So we acknowledge that even actions, even things in the physical realm, have meaning in and of themselves. These are meanings that could be communicated to others, right? You can imagine that if a person is shy and they blush, for example, or if they're angry and they redden, even in that in those changes of state and color of the person's face, that's an indication of some other meaning of shyness or of anger or whatever it may be. And likewise, when we're standing and we're bowing and we're prostrating in prayer, intended as prayer, and understood as prayer, as salat, as worship, that is also expressing a meaning, right? These are actions these are actions that express humility when done with the intention and the mindfulness of the meanings of these actions. When they are done with the intention for worship, they are expressions of servanthood, right? And thus we get from ibadah, we get abd, that servant. The term for a worshipper is also the term for a servant. And our act of worship, ibadah, is an expression of that servanthood. So these actions of standing, of stopping and standing before Allah, stopping and standing before Allah, bowing and prostrating to Allah, while Allah is transcendently above and beyond His creation, that these actions carry meanings that we should be focused on and we should be aware of as we're doing them. They should not be our daily exercise routine. They should not be just habitual movements. And so, to enter into the spiritual dimensions of the prayer, we have to do the work of spiritual purification that we've mentioned in the previous weeks, and fasting and guarding one's tongue and controlling one's anger. These are all part of polishing the heart. Now, I've heard some of my teachers have described the prayer as a sort of litmus test, or I should say a barometric reading in a sense. You know overall your state or where you are in your journey towards Allah. You know where you are in your spiritual path when you take a look at your prayer and you get a sense of the quality of your prayer. And so if your prayer is a bunch of movements, habitual movements, with little difference from any kind of stretching at the gym, for example, and if your recitation of the Quran in the prayer, and if your glorification and your expressions of God's greatness are mere patterns and habits, where the meanings are not being reflected upon and remembered and drawn to mind in that moment of prayer, then we're dealing with an empty prayer, right? And the scholars have disagreed on the validity, the outward validity versus the inward sincerity and validity, and if one has mere outward validity, if you say and do all the right things in the prayer at the right times with the right conditions, physical conditions met, there's a discussion about, well, how much focus does one actually need, how much awareness does one actually need to have for the prayer to be valid? Some have said it's sufficient just in saying Allahu Akbar. It's sufficient that if one has presence of mind in that, that the prayer counts. Others, such as Imam al-Ghazali, have a stronger opinion on that. In any case, our goal is not merely to stretch and to bow for the physical movement. We can jog for that. We can do other kinds of exercises for that purpose. Rather, there's an inward meaning to each of these expressions, and that is our goal is to realize those and to be in the habit of realizing and remembering the meanings of these movements first and foremost. And I shouldn't say first and foremost. I mentioned them first. However, they are of great importance. However, we also have of great importance the meanings of our expressions, and at bare minimum, when we begin with the takbiratul ihram, when we say Allahu Akbar, when we begin with Allah is transcendently greatest, above and beyond, that bare minimum, our goal should be to have as much of the full implications of that meaning in our minds at that moment, so that when we begin, we remember we are standing before Allah. And hopefully, if we can get that together, and we move on, step by step through the prayer with focus on meaning, then inshallah we can one day get from the takbiratul ihram, from the first takbir, from the first Allahu Akbar, to the final salams of Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah as we close. If we can fill from the takbir to the salams with consciousness, with dhikr and with khushu' and all these other terms, and avoiding ghafla and these other terms that we'll discuss next time, then inshallah ta'ala we will succeed in imbuing these physical actions with their spiritual meanings. And our goal, inshallah, myself first and foremost, wallahi first and foremost, is our goal is to seek that sincerity and focus in prayer through intentional, active effort to achieve that kind of focus. And so it's a tall order. It's very difficult for many, but that is our goal, and that is what we're here to at least begin to discuss, inshallah. I apologize for any kind of technical difficulties. Inshallah, we'll have an uninterrupted broadcast next time, and we will pick up from a discussion of the prayer for dhikr, for remembrance, and avoiding ghafla, avoiding forgetfulness, and so on in the prayer. جزاكم الله خيرا والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. جزاكم الله خيرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.